I've made it no secret that I adore flying aces. But what is it that makes flying aces so good? Well, that's what we're gonna find out this video. See you on the other side. I had set my expectations straight when I entered Flying Aces queue line, remembering the disappointing ride on Formula Rosa that preceded this. I boarded Flying Aces train in the very front seat because I wasn't much of a back row rider back then. But I was sensible enough to take the wing seat. The station doors opened in front of me. My heart was thumping. What was gonna come next? Then the sound of the cable lift starting grabbed the attention of my ears. Oh dear, what was happening? I had never seen a cable lift before, so I did not know what to expect. The train slowly rolled forward as my anticipation increased ever so slightly. Then, the train attached itself to the cable and I was yanked up the lift hill. This was one of the most surprising moments of the day, and that's also including the disappointing ride on Formula Rosa. I was pleasantly surprised by the excellent pacing on the roller coaster, especially considering what the POV showed. Flying Aces became a surprise hit, and it crept up to my number 1 spot alongside Twisted Colossus. After that ride, I considered myself a Flying Aces fanboy. This is the segment of the video where I score the roller coaster based on 5 different categories. Layout, which has 75% weightage, comfort, which has 10% weightage, duration, which has 8% weightage, presentation, which has 5% weightage, and uniqueness, which is 2% weightage. Anyway, let's move on to giving scores. Right out of the gate, there is a 51-degree cable lift hill, and as much as I want to consider this an element of Flying Aces, I just can't, because a cable lift hill is basically an exaggerated chain lift hill, and I do not consider a chain lift hill an element of a roller coaster, so the cable lift hill will not get any score. The first element of Flying Aces is a massive 207-foot drop. Now, the drop angle is not really known. I searched all of the internet to find it, but I just couldn't get anything. So if any of you guys know what the drop angle of Flying Aces is, let me know in the comment section below. However, what is known of this drop is that this drop gives some crazy ejector airtime. Now, there are a lot of reasons for this. The most obvious is that this drop is huge, and the ejector airtime is sustained. Now, another reason why the drop is so good is that the top of the drop is rounded, so because of that the airtime is sustained. Now if this was any other coaster, the drop, it would only give floater airtime. However, since there was a cable lift hill before the drop, and since cable lift hills are faster than normal chain lift hills, the whole drop provides coaster enthusiasts with great sustained ejector airtime. If you haven't already guessed it, here's the score for this element. This takes us into a turn, which takes us into a non-inverted loop. Now, I will admit, I was expecting a lot more from this loop, because after all, it's one of the tallest loops in the world, and I was expecting to get a lot of positives at the bottom, a lot of laterals at the top, and some airtime at the top. However, I was given a lot of positive G-forces at the bottom, some laterals at the top, but no airtime whatsoever. And that's really a shame, because I was expecting this element to get a score of at least 9. However, it still doesn't change the fact that this is a very good element that still provides a lot of G-forces. So I would have given this element an 8 out of 10 if it wasn't for one problem. And it doesn't even have anything to do with the roller coaster or the layout. It has to do something with where it's positioned. That's because at the top of the non-inverted loop, you're staring directly into the sun, regardless of the time of the day. This defies all sorts of logic, but that doesn't change the fact that that's what happened. And I do not have an explanation for this. So, here's the score. After the non-inverted loop, there is an overbanked turn, and it's just an overbanked turn, similar to what you would see on Fury 3 to 5. It's nothing special, and while it did give some good positive G-forces, it didn't do anything special or unique or interesting for that matter. So, it's no surprise that this is the score for the element. The next element on Flying Aces is a speed hill, and I was pleasantly surprised by this element, because I was expecting it to be just another hill, but I got some great ejector airtime out of this, and it was awesome. It was a great quick pop of ejector airtime. I didn't see it coming, and honestly, there's no question about what the score of this element should be, because even though it gave some awesome airtime, it didn't do anything special or interesting. At the end of the day, it's just a hill, even though it is a really good one at that. The next element on Flying Aces is a Rolling Thunder hill. Well, that's what I like to call it, because it is basically like El Toro's Rolling Thunder hill, and it's even taken at a very similar speed as El Toro's Rolling Thunder hill. It's slightly slower, but that doesn't change the fact that this hill gives some crazy airtime. And yes, it's the best airtime I've experienced so far. It is awesome sustained ejector airtime, and there's nothing else like it in the world, except of course El Toro's Rolling Thunder hill. So there's no questioning it. This element can only get one score, and that is, well, here you go. The next element on this coaster it's a normal airtime hill, and while it doesn't do anything special, what it does is simply incredible. A great moment of sustained ejector airtime. And that's really all I can say about it. Just some incredible airtime. So here's the score for this element. After this action-packed section of the roller coaster, Flying Aces had to take a break. And by a break, it meant a very intense 180 plus degree turn. It's actually way more than 180 degrees, but it feels like a 180 degree turn. And yeah, it's just a normal turn, but my god is it intense. But still, it's just a turn, it doesn't do anything too interesting. So it gets a pretty standard score. The next element on Flying Aces is the Twisted Speed Hill. Again, I was pleasantly surprised by this element, because I was just expecting it to be a transition to the next element, but wow, it delivered some airtime and laterals. And while this element could have given more airtime if it was shaped properly, it compensates for that with some great laterals, and there's just nothing bad about this element. It's just a whole lot of good. So here's the score for this element. The next element on Flying Aces is a Stengel Dive, and it does exactly what you think it does. It gives a lot of positive Gs and a few laterals, but other than that it doesn't do anything. But what it does is absolutely incredible. So here's the score for this element. The next element on Flying Aces is an outer banked airtime hill, or at least that's the only thing that I can call it, because I just can't find an explanation for what this element is, because this is just an incredible element from start to finish. It starts off by giving you some awesome lateral Gs and some good positives. Then it gives you ejector airtime at this moment. And after that, it turns towards the right and you get some great positives and some laterals. And the whole time you're feeling as if you're not in control. And this is just an incredible element. I wasn't expecting anything out of this, but I was blown away. This is the definition of a perfect element. It combines all forces, positives, negatives, laterals, and makes you feel out of control. Well, since it's perfect, there's only one score I can give it. After this, there is a turn which takes us into an overbank. And it's nothing special. It delivers some good positive Gs, but it doesn't do anything. And it's just your average overbank. And I'm just gonna give it an average score. The next element is a heartline roll. Okay, I don't have a problem with the heartline roll itself. It's smooth and it gives some excellent hang time. But there's a lot of stuff that it does to Flying Aces that I don't appreciate. The most obvious thing that it does is that it kills the pacing of the ride. And secondly, and more importantly, there is no need for an inversion in a hypercoaster. This is supposed to be your intense ride without inversions. And I understand that Ferrari World needed a roller coaster with inversions. But Flying Aces just isn't the answer to that. Flying Aces is your airtime machine, which is also something that Ferrari World didn't have, because Formula Rossa doesn't give airtime. But I'll make a review on that later. The heartline roll is just pointless. It kills the pacing, and while it does deliver hang time, it doesn't do anything else. And I just wish that the heartline roll was taken away, because I follow a strict rule. You either have more than one inversion on a coaster or have no inversions on a coaster. Because if your coaster has just one inversion, it's likely to feel out of place and unnecessary. So that's why I just can't give this element a good score, even though it does what it wants to do correctly. So here's the score. The next element on Flying Aces is an S-bend, and this element it just fits perfectly here. And it would have complemented Flying Aces so well if the ride hadn't slowed down this much. And this could have been prevented only if that heartline roll wasn't there. See what I mean? That heartline roll just killed the pacing. And that makes this S-bend feel really bland. It doesn't add anything to the ride, it just doesn't do anything. So that's why I'm gonna give it a score that is as bland as this element is. To finish off Flying Aces, there is a teeny tiny airtime hill that leads you to the brake run. And this would have been a great moment of sharp ejector airtime, a quick pop of sharp ejector airtime if you will. And it just feels like a wasted opportunity because if the train was going slightly faster, it would have been a fantastic element to finish off the ride. But since that heartline roll exists, what we got was just a small airtime hill that delivers only a little bit of airtime in the back seat. So it's a pretty average element, and that's why it gets a pretty average score. And that's it for the scoring of Flying Aces. Flying Aces is a smooth ride, and while it does have the occasional rattle, it never gets in the way of your enjoyment while riding the coaster. And the rattle, it isn't even that bad. So Flying Aces gets a perfect score here. You'd probably expect Flying Aces to have terrible restraints, considering it's the same model as Skyrush, also known as Thigh Crush. However, Flying Aces fares surprisingly well here because of one tweak Intamin made to the restraints. While Skyrush has literal bars for lap bars, Flying Aces has a contour on the lap bars which take the shape of your thighs. So, when the lap bar comes down on you on Skyrush, it cuts into the flesh of your thighs. However, the contours on Flying Aces lap bars spread the pain when the lap bar comes down across the sides of your thighs as well as the top of your thighs, making you feel lesser pain. Still, Flying Aces lap bars come down and it isn't painless. So, Flying Aces does not get a perfect score. With a 55-second ride time, it would be safe to say that Flying Aces is a very long roller coaster. However, the duration category also accounts for the pacing of the roller coaster. And as I've already said, Flying Aces has exceptionally good pacing. And if I may say this myself, its pacing is as good as Skyrush's pacing. Now, before you go wild in the comment section below, let me explain. First, I have done the math which you can see on the screen up here, and the difference in pacing between Skyrush and Flying Aces is only 0.5 feet per second. So, why does Flying Aces look so slow in the POV? Well, getting the obvious out of the way, the POV is extremely slow, and it should be viewed at 1.25 times the speed. More importantly, however, there is another reason why Flying Aces seems so slow, and that is because there is no scenery around Flying Aces, not even a tree or even the occasional fence. There is nothing that can show how fast Flying Aces is. It's just miles of flat land around. So, because of that, Flying Aces seems very slow. Now, let's compare that to Skyrush. Skyrush goes over a lake, trees, paths, and there's just so much scenery around it that makes it look a lot faster than it actually is. So, Flying Aces gets a perfect score here. Flying Aces has an elaborately themed queue line with screens, antiques, replicas, plants, animatronics, and so much more to keep you engaged while you wait for your turn. And the train on Flying Aces is absolutely gorgeous. Again, it's very simple. It's just the front of a plane and a propeller, and that's it, because that's really all that Flying Aces needs. On the layout of the coaster, however, there is very little theming, and by very little, I mean zero. No theming whatsoever. If this were another roller coaster, I would remove points for having no theming on the layout of the roller coaster. Yet surprisingly, I'm not going to remove any points. In fact, Flying Aces is going to keep its perfect score, and let me explain why that's going to be the case. Flying Aces is about taking a ride on a plane in the sky. So why on earth do you need theming when there is nothing around you when you're in the sky? Therefore, Flying Aces does get its perfect score, and it is well earned. When talking about other presentation related stuff, including the track color, and the location, there's only one expression I can use for this. Getting the obvious out of the way, Flying Aces has an extremely generic color scheme. And I do understand that this all-white track might represent the smoke that's coming out of the rear end of a plane, but come on, that is not a good enough reason to use this color scheme on Flying Aces, because honestly, Flying Aces deserves better than this. When talking about the land around Flying Aces, well, that isn't any better because it's just flat land all around, and underneath Flying Aces, there's a checkerboard for some reason. And all I have to ask the designers of the land around the coaster is, why? Why torture Flying Aces with such horrible landscaping around it? Why give it such barren land to work with? Why? And on top of that, why paint it white so that it blends into the ground, making it almost impossible to see? There's just so much wrong with the presentation of Flying Aces. I could go on about it forever, but since I don't have time for that, I'll just give you the score right now. And well, it isn't all that good. Flying Aces is one of only 2 prototype wing coasters manufactured by Intamin, the other one being Skyrush. So, what separates Flying Aces from Skyrush and all other roller coasters on Earth? What makes it unique? For starters, Flying Aces has the most unconventional layout of a roller coaster, and it has a lot of variety with its elements. It has sustained airtime with both ejector and floater, and it even has an inversion and a non-inverted loop. Flying Aces has everything you could ask for in a roller coaster. While it pulls off some elements fantastically and the others not so fantastically, Flying Aces still has the variety that it needs to be unique. And this variety is only matched by Flying Aces' RMC counterpart, which is pretty much every RMC hybrid out there. Still, I think that Flying Aces deserves a perfect score here. If there was a movie I would compare Flying Aces to, that movie would be Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman released just 1 year after Flying Aces opened to the public, and like Flying Aces' strong layout, Wonder Woman has an extremely strong plot that completely drops the ball at the end in favor of an external, unnecessary, generic CGI villain.
Then I will destroy you!
Or, in Flying Aces' case, an unnecessary, generic hardline role that completely destroys the pacing. Like CGI Ares in Wonder Woman destroys all the emotion of the movie. Still, both Wonder Woman and Flying Aces are and should be revered as masterpieces. I'd like to end this video by confirming what you've subconsciously known all this time. I have a giant soft spot for Flying Aces. Yes, Flying Aces isn't perfect, and I'm well aware of its flaws, but Flying Aces will always hold a special place in my heart, because it was the roller coaster I rode before going into a 3-year slumber of not riding a roller coaster. And well, I'll be eternally grateful to Flying Aces for giving me such a fantastic final ride.